I was about to leave. Then I tripped, knocked over the books I'd stacked to make a stand for my phalaenopsis. The pot shattered. The roots were bare, coiled tightly around bark. It's overdue for repotting. I was surprised I felt nothing else. It's an old orchid, one I gave Mum almost a decade ago, before the store opened. My oldest orchid. It flowers still. One of the books on that stack, a dictionary, had fallen open. On the right was a morning glory, its indigo now sepia. On the left, a brown stain. I bent to pick up the dictionary, sent a flurry of flowers and leaves flitting to the floor. Mum used to bring me to the neighborhood park. The swings at the playground made small, silver squeaks. On the way home, we would study the ground for blooms to press between pages. We had a vast collection, which I had forgotten for years, until now, when I find myself sitting on cold towel, sobbing amidst the foliage of a past life. Floristry basics. Cuttings. A word is a cutting, a sentence, a bouquet. When the inflorescence wilts, scatter cuttings in a tub of water. Allow words to float as they absorb the new context into which they have been plunged. When I got up to repot my orchid, the sky was indigo. I unclipped the sticks holding up the stem. I dug into the roots. Mum taught me everything I know about orchids. Inside, everything, the orchid, my hands, the freckled leaves of old books laid bare, was steeped in bloom. I surfaced for breath, opening the door to warm air. Cars drove in low hums. Orchid, noun, 1. Orchid grew out of the Greek orchis, for tubers of orchids resemble testicles. Orchis, hybrid son of a nymph and satyr, raped a priestess at a festival held for Dionysus. The fates sent wild beasts to tear his body apart. Orchis's father mourned and prayed the gods would make his body whole again. Instead, they took the deconstructed material of his body and rearranged it into a plant, flowering, still. Floristry basics. Roots. Take cuttings in early mornings when stems strong with water, steadied by the memory of their roots. Cut at an angle and mull the last arrangements while they drink from their new slants of severance. Most of my blooms, I know, die young. Some come in boxes, already severed, their stems in individual plastic tubes. Others I cut myself, my left hand cradling the stem that my right snips with shears sterilized. There is no need to be wistful. Flowers shed. Orchid, noun, 2a. Greek symbolism is not always good for business, but the story can be tweaked. Learn to identify the beginning that best serves you. prune it where it doesn't. Begin, for example, with Henry Ridley and our national flower for a local flair and a tint of colonial nostalgia. 1893, 5 years into his job as a director of the Singapore Botanic Gardens, Henry discovered a new orchid hybrid. He quickly took a cutting, had it sketched, preserved, and presented Vanda Joachim in the Gardener's Chronicle, the respected horticultural periodical in London. People like to tell me floristry is a good job for a lady. The guy who came in yesterday didn't even say lady. He said girl. Girl. In his eyes dimmed by those reflective Ray-Bans, my plants and I are one and the same. Trivial, domestic, primed for a life of objectification. Yes, I said. I play with lives for a living. Orchid, noun 3a. When Henry, nicknamed Mad Ridley for his precision and fervour, first registered the hybrid with the Royal Horticultural Society in London, he had acknowledged Miss Agnes Joachim as its creator. In this telling, you may choose to question Henry, in which case the plot would thicken in 1963, when Humphrey Morrison Burkill, then director of the Singapore Botanic Gardens, asserted that Vanda Joachims were nothing more than a delightful accident of nature. For it would have been impossible for a local, much less a local woman, to have had the vision or skill to artificially pollinate an orchid. Certainly not before 1928, when Humphrey's predecessor, Richard Holtham, established Singapore's orchid hybridization program. Floristry basics, synonyms. Each cutting is unique, but that is not to say despair is the only rational response to wilting. Look for a synonym, if necessary, in the catalogue. There they are novel, updated daily. I can't help, no matter how many times I take everything apart, but repeat the same arrangements over and over again. It used to be so intuitive. But now I look at my cuttings scattered on the table and I don't know how to begin. Maybe I've lost it. Maybe I should have been content with floristry as a hobby. Maybe I should just quit and go back to my job. But this is not something I can just leave. There's rent, and then there are all these potted lives to care for. Each morning I check leaves for signs of thirst. In the store there is no rain, no morning dew. Occasionally the aircon drips. Mom saw the beauty in everything, in withered flowers, in millipedes, in me. I remember the day I received my first report card. I was 7. The form teacher, Miss Tan, told us to line up according to our class rankings. I was 39 out of 40. The line unfolded from the smart end by the classroom door to my end in front of the teacher's table. Miss Tan kept walking to and from her table to get the presents she got for us, but as she worked her way down the line, the rewards shrank. From a basket filled with toys and sweets to a small notebook a pencil case, and finally to a wooden pencil, which she pushed into my hands with a dirty look. I remember thinking that if I had felt terrible, the boy next to me must have felt worse. But when I turned to see what he got, I saw that it was the same pencil. The kind I hated, which, instead of gliding across the paper, scratched. When our eyes met, I gave him the same look that Miss Tan had given me and walked back to my desk with my head held high. After school, I carried the report card home in fear. Miss Tan wanted it signed. I gave Mom the card and watched her eyes move across the page and down towards the remarks. She could have done better if she tried. The sun was setting and the light on the report card grew increasingly blue. There's no need to cry. I know you tried, Mom said finally, to my surprise. Come on, didn't you say you wanted to learn how to report an orchid? When you take an orchid out of its pot, you must first loosen the root's hold on the moss. Late last evening, as I unraveled the braids of the shattered Phalaenopsis, I saw how the ends were white and shriveled from neglect. You have to do it gently. It's like combing hair, Mom had taught me. I remember her fingers running through mine and mine through hers until the final months when all of it started to fall. After she passed, I couldn't make anything stay anymore. No matter where I placed the cutting, no matter which cuttings I chose, no matter which form I tried, nothing felt right. In the end, I couldn't even send her off with an arrangement of my own. Orchids are too fussy. Can you recommend something easier? Although orchids are really some of the most adaptable plants on Earth, they are a cosmopolitan family, capable of surviving on every continent except Antarctica. You can find them in all kinds of habitats, in the desert, on Arctic tundra, or on coral atolls, exposed to the salt of sea spray. Cultivating plants, Mom used to say, is not so much about management as it is about world building. The transformation of a place, a greenhouse, a concrete store, a humble flat, into a rainforest, shady and damp, or an alpine meadow, open and bright. Horticulture, the practice of nurturing plants for consumption or ornament, is as much a science of cultivating belonging, the building of a home. This morning, I snipped off the last blooms still hanging on Mom's Phalaenopsis. The stems stand flowerless, but it will blossom again. For now, the moss is moist and new. The roots are learning to take hold. The smell of wet earth lingers in the air. My late bloomer, Mom used to call me. Orchid, noun, 1. Begin again. More than a century after her death, Agnes was finally recognized as the creator of Vanda Miss Joachim, which has since been reclassified as Papilionantha Miss Joachim. The push to set the record straight began in the year 2000 when historian Nadia Wright published an article in the Malayan Orchid Review providing evidence that Agnes had hybridized the orchid herself. Nadia's research, along with Agnes's contribution, was dismissed as mere speculation, an unscholarly claim that wrongly accused male experts of gender bias. In 2015, Agnes was inducted into the Singapore Women's Hall of Fame for her hybridization of Vanda Miss Joachim. But it was only in 2016 when her great-grandniece, Linda Locke, convinced the National Heritage Board to conduct a historical review of the evidence that official sources finally amended their records. Not much is known about Agnes, except for the bare facts. She was born and bred in Singapore in the Armenian community. She won many prizes for her plants. She never married. She passed of cancer at 45. She was the first woman in the world to hybridize an orchid. After transferring the pollen of Hookeriana to Terrace, Agnes waited for the seed to germinate into a new life, which flowers still. Thank you.
Ya, aku